Warm welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you for joining this webinar on the harmonization of cross-border payment policies and regulations in the IGAD region. Today, we are focusing on the insights of South Sudan. I will briefly share with you some logistical notes before we start. So the webinar is going to last around 1 hour and 15 minutes. It is being recorded and we will share with all the registrants in the days after the webinar, the presentation and the recording. In case you have any questions on the presentation or during the panel discussion, please add them in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen and specify to whom your question is addressed, and we will respond to them at the end of the webinar. So now let me introduce to you my dear colleague, Edgar, who is our Payments and Financial Markets Infrastructure Specialist. Over to you, Edgar.
Thank you very much, Justine. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our webinar, the Region Harmonization of Remittance Policies in the IGAD region with a focus on South Sudan. To start us off, we have some welcome remarks by one of my colleagues, Mr. Mike McCaffrey. Mike is the Regional Manager for East and Southern Africa for the Inclusive Digital Economies. So the IDE, Mike, please just give us some welcome remarks and then we'll take it again from there. Welcome, Mike.
Thanks, Edgar, and sorry for that. My computer literally chose to freeze right then, but I hope you can hear me well now. I'd like to start off by acknowledging Mr. Ibrahim Kasso, Coordinator Regional Migration Fund at Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, Mr. Akum David Sabakar, Head Payment Systems Department, Bank of South Sudan, Foreign Affairs, Mr. Joseph Aranatwe, Vice President, Garouche, Money Service, Juba, South Sudan, Mr. Raphael Ampu, Executive Director, Alpha Bank, Juba, South Sudan, the project team, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Good afternoon. I thank all of you for being present. We have come together today to acknowledge the great importance of remittances in the lives of South Sudanese families and the obstacles that make sending remittances more challenging and costly than should be. This cooperation between IGAD and UNCDF is vital to bring focused collaboration on remittances. I thank the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency for their support, the IGAD leadership and technical staff, and all of you as we acknowledge what is a truly historic undertaking. South Sudan became the world's newest country in Africa, the 54th country, in 2011. Consequently, there is much work still to be done in formulating various policies, laws, and regulations. These factors have repercussions for remittance transfers, with South Sudan having some of the highest costs for remittance transfers in the region and the world. IGAD and UNCDF conducted a diagnostic assessment of all the relevant policies and laws and regulations related to remittances and payments infrastructure that support cross-border payments, including mobile money and remittance related digital financial services. And in this webinar today, we will discuss the findings and recommendations. It is fully acknowledged that not only does South Sudan have policy challenges that hinder the smooth flow of remittances, but also governments of the send-side countries have their national security objectives or foreign policy agenda affecting the flow of remittances to South Sudan. As we discuss these challenges and their corresponding possible solutions, I call for South Sudan authorities' commitment in addressing the inhibitors facing remittance flows. I also urge SENSIDE countries to avoid restricting relationships with South Sudanese remittance service providers indiscriminately. Partner governments from SENSIDE should work to modernize the risk management regime and recognize the need to precisely calibrate the risks for each individual remittance service provider. This will mitigate unintended impacts for the whole South Sudanese market. This is in line with the risk-based recommendations of AML-CFT policies. Thank you very much for your attendance. We look forward to working with each of the partners here and look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you very much, and back to you, Edgar.
Thank you very much, Mike. I'm looking forward indeed to deep into this webinar, getting to know what the diagnostic assessment came up with for the landscape of South Sudan. Next, I'd like to formally introduce the panelists and maybe talk a bit briefly about their background. I'd like to start with the regulator, Bank of South Sudan. Bank of South Sudan today is represented by Mr. David Akum Sabakar. He heads the Payment Systems Department in the Bank of South Sudan, although previously he was in the private sector and he was working at KCB, which is a regional bank in East Africa. You're welcome, Mr. Akum. And then next,
thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Ibrahim Kasso. Mr. Ibrahim is a coordinator for Regional Migration Fund at IGAD Secretariat, and he's been there since August 2021. Before that, he was a program manager for migration at the Swedish Regional Development Corporation for Africa. Again, this is hosted at the Swedish Embassy in Addis Ababa, as well as the Swiss Development Corporation, again hosted at the Switzerland Embassy in Addis Ababa. He has worked on migration and development, including remittances projects in various regions of Africa. Currently, Mr. Kasso is supporting the IGAD Secretariat in the implementation of projects on regional harmonization of remittances policies in the IGAD region. You're welcome, Mr. Kasso. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Raphael Anampiu. Mr. Raphael,
thank you very much, Edgar, for a very good introduction.
Oh, great, thank you. Next, I'd like to introduce Mr. Raphael Anampiu. Mr. Raphael serves as an executive director at Alpha Commercial Bank, based in Sudan. Mr. Raphael is also a founding partner of Flex Money Transfer, an entity focused on global remittances that is regulated and licensed by the Central Bank of Kenya. He previously worked with Stanbic Bank in various senior roles, including heading the bank's transactional banking business in South Sudan and its cash management business in Kenya. Mr. Raphael holds a Bachelor of Commerce degree, finance option, as well as an MBA strategic management from the University of Nairobi. You're welcome, Mr. Raphael.
Thank you very much.
Our next panelist is Mr. Joseph Arinaitwe. Joseph is an experienced C-level executive with over 20 years experience in digital banking and mobile payments across Africa. His expertise lies in business development planning, transformational management, and go-to-market strategy development. As the former head of e-channels and virtual banking for the United Bank of Africa, popularly known as UBA, He has successfully managed businesses in over 18 African countries and is adept at driving large-scale digital and mobile money projects. He is currently serving as Vice President of mGurush Money Service. mGurush is South Sudan's leading mobile money service. And I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome Mr. Renaitwe. He is a mobile money evangelist dedicated to advancing Africa's financial landscape. You're very welcome, Mr. Renaitwe.
Thank you, Edgar. It's a pleasure being here.
Thank you. Then last but not least, myself, as just introduced, I'm a payments and financial markets infrastructure specialist. I'm with the UNCDF migration and remittances team. I'm responsible for the payments infrastructure assessments in the IGAD member countries that have been carried out, including South Sudan. And prior to joining UNCDF, I worked at the East African community as an IT infrastructure specialist for the financial sector development regional project. I am your moderator today. So next, we will have a presentation. Presentation will be done by Mr. Ibrahim Kassa from IGAD. In his presentation, he'll be showcasing some of the remittance work in South Sudan. After the presentation, I will then engage our other panelists, David, Raphael, and Joseph, in a panel discussion. As mentioned before, please leave any queries you might have in the Q&A panel, and we shall endeavor to have them responded to. I thank you all, and you're welcome to the next phase, which is the presentation. Over to you, Mr. Kassa.
Thank you very much, Edgar, for the very good introduction. Let me recognize the presence of Mr. David Akum, the Director for National Payment Bank of South Sudan, Raphael as well from Alpha Bank, and Joseph from Grus, and other UNCDF colleagues. A very warm good afternoon in East Africa. And wherever you are, good morning to those in the Western Hemisphere. So thank you for organizing this meeting. Let me take you through to the regional remittance harmonization policies in the IGAD region, and also the work that we are doing with South Sudan. As you can see, we'll go through the highlight of the background and the migration and the remittance in South Sudan, and also the IGAD and the UNCDF regional harmonization. Projects that we are jointly implementing, the opportunity, and of course the inhibitors and next slide. Yeah, thank you very much. With respect to the background, migrant remittances, it is directly impacting indicator of the Sustainable Development Goals, as all of us know, 10.C1 and 17.32. It is important to increase the disposable income to migrant families, which of course leads to economic consumption and investment, including in the basics of health, education, and other local economies. Remittance inflow to especially low development countries, as the current data 2023 shows, it stands at $656 billion approximately dollar, which is very significant amount and exceeding the official development assistance, with the exclusion of China, of course. And worldwide, the remittance are expected to reach $80 billion by the end of this year, which is in a month's time from now, as per the information from the economic sources. Next slide. Yeah. In terms of specific with South Sudan remittance landscape, just to give you a big background from the different studies, USD 1 million 1,100 channel. As you know, the remittance flow is for formal channel in South Sudan was stands at 50%, which means the rest is through the informal sector. Migrants from South Sudan worldwide stands at 2020 stand 2.6 million, which is a very large number of population, which people stand as almost half of the population. Of course, the average cost of transfer in the second quarter in 2022 stands at 8%, per USD, and it also $200 per every expense, which is the total 10.6. The cost of intra-regional remittance is even higher in our region, which is one of the main challenge of remittance flow in our region. Next. Yeah, as you can see from the graph, the number of migrants and vis-a-vis the volume over time is very much increasing. If you take the last 20 years, where it was less than 500,000 people, and by 2020 it goes to more than see the trend of migration in South Sudan. Next. As you can see, the trend of remittances over the last almost 9 years since 2014, and the inflow to South Sudan in terms of millions, you can easily see from the graph that how the trend is increasing and decreasing, and reached its highest in 2018, just before COVID, and go back down to was almost less than 80,000 during the COVID period in 2019 and 2020, and again has shown significant increase over the last 2 years, with a slight decrease over 2022. But the current trend looks very much stable and will be an increasing trend given the recovering economy from the post-COVID era, as you can see from the graph very clearly, which is a very demonstrative of how the trend in the flow of remittances is varied from time to time, including during COVID and before that. Next slide. Yeah, let me also take you through the policies, the regional harmonization remittance policies and regulatory framework that UNCDF and IGAD is jointly collaborating. Just to give you a bit background of this project has been started in 2019, back in 2019, when it was initially launched in Dakar, Senegal in December 2019, just before COVID. But during 2020 and 2021, due to COVID, there wasn't much progress in terms of implementation. This is a regional project targeting 3 main Africa regions, basically West Africa, Central Africa, and East Africa, where IGAD is one of the regional economic community signatory with UNCDF, and implementing this project over the last 3 years almost, with the first 2 years through COVID and the last 1.5 years was a big time. So the more focus was on 3 areas. One is to improve the harmonization of policies and laws in the IGAD member state. The second one is to improve the remittance infrastructure, which is one of the lowest and poorly developed in the region, and of course capacity building for the member state. In the policy harmonization, the main target are the licensing and authorization regime, how the different member states are legalizing and licensing authorizations, and the prudential supervision systems, the financial integrity, and the consumer protection and foreign exchange regulations are one of the policy targets of the project. In a nutshell, it is to improve the policy environment for remittance inflow within IGAD region, and also from other parts of the world to the IGAD region. With respect to the remittance infrastructure, it is to promote the regional payment hub and to facilitate interoperability of cross-border payment and harmonization of operating standards in the mobile money system in the region. And IGAD is very much rigorous in promoting the examples of like M-Pesa in Kenya. which is the very best example model of money transfer in the region. Focus is on knowledge sharing between member states, and of course, for especially financial sector development, the bank and financial operating services and the fintech organizations is also one of the focus of the project. Next. This is how the policy in the IGAD region has been during the COVID, that we have been virtually inaugurating the project for the inception meeting and of course the launching with executives and the UNCDF colleagues who by then during COVID has to launch, just to give you the history of how this cabin would be, where we have Director for Health and Social Development from IGAD, where we have Executive Secretary of IGAD is also part of it, and of course, Emil and other colleagues from UNCDF has also taken part and held the inaugural ceremony virtually. Next. This is the various programs that IGAD and the UNCDF have done during the policy and technical level consultation at member states level. This is one of these, the one which has been done in Uganda, diagnostic study and presentation on the remittance environment and infrastructure, and also the following report and the discussion on the report by the member states on the specific report of their specific countries, and the consultation with the member state at various levels. This is to show how the remittance project at the regional level has been engaging a member state through the leadership of IGAD and with the technical support from UNCDF in the course of the last 2 years specifically. Next. Yeah, this is also part of the regional level engagement and the harmonization remittance policies in the region, which is currently in progress, and also roadmap discussion and development with member states, where the roadmap has been discussed and approved by the member states, so that the implementation will be followed at the specific member state, and so the member states have been ready, build, and agree on the action on the ground with respect to their specific context. So that's what the roadmap is directly showing, and the implementation of the regional roadmap for each of the specific countries. Next. This one is a very important and a decisive event. I would say it is part of the very important meeting where we have convened the central bank governors in Nairobi last May 2015, where the governor of the bank from IGAD region, I have to say, 5 bank governors and 2 deputy bank governors have been taken part in this important meeting, where the executive secretary of IGAD and the high-level IGAD directors for finance, director for health and social development, and other partners have joined this meeting, and where it has been discussed and underlined the importance of harmonizing a regional remittance system in the IGAD region to facilitate the flow of remittance in the region, and also from abroad to the region itself, where the different challenges has been presented and well discussed, and finally agreed that to assign one focal person from each of the banks, specifically the data and the statistics department as a focal person to facilitate the implementation of the project in all member states as we go on. It's an important meeting, an important policy level that have received a very good even local media coverage in terms of promoting the importance of harmonizing regional policies in the IGAD region. I would say it's the first of its kind in Africa to bring the bank governors and to the subject matter will discuss on the importance of developing harmonized policy systems with a high-level political organ of IGAD, including the executive secretary, who has been in attendance of the full-day event. Next. When from just place back to the previous slide. Okay, so on the remittance, on the general challenges and the frictions, the remittance inflow and the challenge it has in the region, the main and the major challenge that has been seen in the region is the high cost of transfer, which is very much compared to the sustainable development goals target of 3%. The cost of transaction in the region is very high, and it's also very much low speed and the limited access in terms of access to remittances, especially the rural parts of the region is very one, and also limited transparency in the whole system. And that's also one of the core challenges. When you see the broader challenge problem, it is one, it is a complex process of compliance checking in all the member states due to poor infrastructure and capacity, especially with anti-money laundering system and the CFTA and limited operating hours in terms of reachability and accessibility for the user. And the legal technology platform is also very much weak in the region. Because the other challenge is the long transaction chain when you receive, when you send the remittance and to receive, it's a long chain. And of course, the cost of funding and the commissioning is also very high in the region. It really needs some sort of intervention to make it efficient, fast, and a reliable money transfer in the region. Of course, weak competition between the different actors and insufficient competition between the intermediate and various financial transfer agencies, which are, as you can see, it's a compelled of challenge in the region that needs to be really a policy target and a deliberate intervention to improve the remittance flow in the system or in the region so that it will contribute to the development of the region and of the family and also of the member states. Next. Regarding the inhibitory facing remittance flow in South Sudan, specifically on the legal one, if you specifically look at the South Sudan, the internal one is on the legal and regulatory framework, which is really more conducive and also facilitative systems so that the flow of remittances will be as efficient as possible. And there's the need for also consumer protection measures so that there will be reliable from the customers. And of course, the payment infrastructure, which needs to be advanced and modernized in terms of efficiency, accessibility, reachability, and of course, reliability and interoperability as well. And of course, collaboration and cooperation are some of the factors that need to be addressed with respect to South Sudan to promote, which is a significant amount of remittance flow in the country from this international diaspora community and also labor migrant working in other parts of the world. Next. And when we see the external ones, the external, of course, inhibitors facing remittance flow are one is the cyber attack on payment system, representing a major threat to the large and retail. And this is not only specific to South Sudan, although this risk has been one of the major in the region with all member states, but the different member states have a different capacity in terms of, protecting themselves from this cyber attack, which South Sudan has also major risk in terms of affecting the possible attack. Of course, de-risking due to the anti-money laundering system and the counter-financing of terrorism which is a major issue to promote remittances flow. And of course, harmonized policies and systems across the border areas and also as a regional bloc is a challenge, which really IGAD is also trying with its member states to improve the regional policy and an instrument to facilitate cross-border payment and also interoperability of the different bank and financial institutions. Next. Just addressing the inhibitors, I think the focus area for the proposed intervention that's under the regional remittance policy harmonization projects being implemented by IGAD and the UNCDF or specific to South Sudan as one of IGAD's member states is one, to address the existing policy and regulatory arbitrage, which is the focus of the project under the regulatory work stream. And of course, address the disjoint policies and regulations, which is the harmonization and the coordination between the various policies and regulations and laws with respect to remittance and financial sector management. Of course, improving payment infrastructure, which is to enhance digitalization of remittances and promoting the money transfer, especially to the rural part of the country. And of course, enhance international and regional cooperation and collaboration within the region with IGAD and also with African Union, and closely working with African Institute for Remittance to promote regional and continental cooperation with respect to the flow of remittances and create an enabling policy and regulatory environment to help, of course, the full potential of remittances, which is very significant in terms of poverty reduction and the development of the country. And of course, the specific target is to promulgate or improve or amend the remittance-related policies, laws, and the systems, which is the priority for the South Sudan. Of course, market infrastructure and promoting the integrated interoperable system to receive the maximum benefit from remittance inflow to South Sudan. Next. As you can see, the roadmap will be focusing on 5 major areas. One, as I have explained in the previous slide, is to promote on the legal and regulatory framework, which is the most important one, followed by consumer protection. This is to develop the confidence of the consumers and the users. Of course, the set roadmap that the IGAD and the policy framework, the harmonization policy target will be the financial and payment system infrastructure. This is something to do with improving the systems and the payment system and the digitalization and promoting the digital money transfer systems. And of course, the market practice, the responsive market practice is one of the roadmap that will be taken forward of providing efficient money transfer system in the region. And of course, the last and the most important one is cooperation and collaboration between the different actors on remittances, the regulatories, the market, the service providers, the mobile money operators, the users, and also the money senders, in this case, the migrant and diaspora, where there has to be really capacity enhancement for the migrants, the labor migrants, other part of the world, and of course the diaspora international South Sudanese to send the money back home in a very efficient and safe manner. That is the focus area of the roadmap of the project. Next. Thank you very much, and I'd like to seek apologies for the background kind of disturbance because I was not in a very good place. Thank you, and looking forward for any of your questions and any comments that you might have. Thank you, and back to the moderator, Adigar. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahim. I was just listing down some points to emphasize on that as you went on. The journey of the project on region harmonization of remittance policies in IGAD region, you mentioned, involves collaborative efforts and has resulted in some achievements. It's good to note in 2021, IGAD and UNCDF Secretariat prepared a kickoff workshop that was attended by all the member states. So some key achievements from there include a commitment from IGAD Secretariat as a coordinator of the project, a commitment by the IGAD member states to the objectives of the project, and a commitment from UNCDF to facilitate these efforts towards regional harmonization of remittance policies. Then there was another slide with a picture, and then that went on to 2022. It was also good to know that in 2022, a regional consultation workshop was held in March of that year. It was attended by about 80 delegates, mainly from the public stakeholders of all the IGAD member states. So the key deliberations resulted in 2 mutual convergence criteria being proposed and adopted, consultations with supply side stakeholders undertaken, roadmap, region Harmonization was finalized during that workshop. And also it's good to know that in the same year, a meeting was held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, where the IGAD member states endorsed a roadmap with key convergence criteria. And then, last but not least, in 2023, we had a central bank governor meeting in Nairobi, Kenya, in the month of May, to receive from the respective member states progress reports, including approved roadmaps, and deliberate on the implementation action plan. It's good to know that central banks drew an action plan for implementation of the roadmap, and several action points were made, recommendations also were made on that during that workshop. So since then, most member states have already nominated a contact person to stand ready for the implementation phase of the project and coordinate activities at the national level. It's important to note that these deliverables under the project are thoroughly reviewed by member states and the central bank. So once again, thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. I was just emphasizing some of the progress that you discussed, you presented. So I'd like us now to move on to the panel discussion. So Mr. David, Raphael, and Joseph, we have some questions that we have set up for you. I'll start with Mr. David Akum, Bank of South Sudan. So David, several recommendations have been made in the diagnostic report regarding policy and regulatory and infrastructure improvements, which, if implemented, will facilitate the smooth flow of remittances. Some recommendations are achievable in the short, medium, or long term. Please just update us what progress has the central bank made so far towards addressing some of these recommendations. Over to you, David.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me apologize for not providing the biodata that you tried to explain before, but I will just take it from there. Prior to me being employed at the bank, I worked after resigning from Kenya Commercial Bank, South Sudan subsidiary. I went and worked with the USAID program as a program manager in one of the states in this country on peace building. So it's like it was a career shift. I had to leave banking now, I had to go to peace building. So I worked there for a year, and before I joined the bank, I also worked at the Ministry of Finance as a payroll manager before I was also employed at the central bank. I hold a bachelor degree in business administration, specializing in accounting and finance, but currently I'm pursuing my Master's of Public Policy and Management at the Strathmore University in Nairobi. I thought just to tell you because I didn't get that time to really just send you an email. Let me just once again thank the team for organizing this very important webinar meeting. And I will also want to extend my appreciation to UNCDF for facilitating an in-person workshop in Boston. That was 2022 in August on migrant remittances and financial services, in which I was nominated to attend to that course. Back to your question. It is very unfortunate that it wasn't me who attended that meeting in Nairobi, but I came to realize later on the governor nominated me to be the contact person, given the nature of my work. So I've not been very free just to go through the document. But from here, I believe I will be able to make sure I follow all the communication. From the question you asked, of course, there are a number of recommendations that were made. And as you very well know, Bank of South Sudan is still at the modernization stages of the national payment system as a whole. Let me say national payment system ecosystem. So the current project we are running is of the funding from African Development Bank, executed by the East African Community. That project has procured a consultant, a legal consultant, to look into the national payment system laws. So from those laws, a lot of regulations, including remittances regulations, were also drafted. In view of that, the National Payment System Act is still it is still with the Ministry of Justice, and subsequently we are doing a very serious follow-up so that it is taken to the next level. Of course, the regulation cannot be signed without the act. So we were waiting for the act to be enacted. Then thereafter we can advise the government to sign the regulation. So all these recommendations that were made during the last meeting, they are captured all in the regulation that was drafted by the consultant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Also, it's good to know that you are the representative nominated, so we shall have continuity. Also, good to know that the recommendations made have so far been included within the act that's just waiting to be passed by the Ministry of Justice. Thank you very much for that. I'd like now to ask a question to the private sector. So if I go to Mr. Raphael, do you consider migrants as a major client segment for Alpha Bank? And if so, what products and services do you have? And as a follow-up question, do your services go beyond the ability to send and receive money? Or have you specifically designed some products to meet the needs of migrants? Mr. Raphael.
Thank you very much, Edgar. First of all, I want to thank you and your team at UNCDF for inviting the private sector within South Sudan to participate in this particular forum. This is very much appreciated, and of course the colleagues also at IGAD. I also want to recognize the presence, of course, of my regulator, the Bank of South Sudan, Mr. David Akum, who of course is a good friend, and I hope he will also approve some of our applications that we'll bring to his desk soon, Mr. Akum. So I think that question is a very good question, Edgar, in terms of whether we see value just outside send and receive from a banking institution perspective. Indeed, now what we've done, other than looking at migrants' proposition as a major segment, we have also looked at it as a specific product within the bank that we have placed specific resources to look at, both from a technology perspective, but also in terms of the use cases available within the region. As you may be aware, South Sudan has a lot of migrants, especially from the neighboring countries of Uganda and Kenya. Myself, as an example, being from Kenya, and I think one of my other colleagues also in the panel is from Uganda, but we're both based here in South Sudan. And a lot of these particular individuals working here then have a reason to remit money back home quite often. What we've just noticed over the few years that we've been working in South Sudan then is that we need to offer a product that is just more than just a send money option, which was typically originally just cash out options at various locations. And we've moved to what we call purpose-based remittances and, kind of integrated with various service providers to offer value. For example, we're working with some of the unit trust account providers, both in Kenya and Uganda, so that Kenyans and Ugandans working here in South Sudan can buy some of the unit trust directly through our rails here in South Sudan. So in addition to just send and receive money, we're offering purpose-based remittances that include investment options. In some cases, we are also offering various other policies, working with some of the insurance companies, including purchase of medical cover for family members, and so on and so forth. So I think this will be a growing need for the migrants based here in South Sudan, given the ever-increasing number, especially with the level of stability that we have seen in the country since the war of 2016. In terms of then what we're doing, of course, is working with some of the partners, including the mobile money operators here in South Sudan, but also mobile money operators both in Kenya and Uganda. So we look forward to seeing how we can expand that product offering into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Raphael. I've just picked out that you're working closely with remittance service providers from other countries, especially the mobile money operators. I think it's a good time now if we also hear from the mobile money operator who is licensed in South Sudan. I'd like now to have my next questions to Mr. Joseph Arenaitwe. So the question is not very different, but maybe just phrased in a different way. What are you doing to attract South Sudanese migrants to send money back home and choose to use your services, which is mobile money? For example, as regards innovation, what products and services do you have beyond the ability to send and receive money? And then as a follow-up, what other products and services do you have specifically designed to meet the needs of the migrants? Over to you, Joseph.
Okay, thank you, Edgar, and thank you for the invitation. And my fellow participants from South Sudan and from UNCDF, in particular, of course, my regulator. We can come here and boast, but we cannot run away from our regulator. So we must always appreciate our regulator. And luckily for us, we have a very good working relationship with our regulator. And that's what has helped us to achieve most of the milestones we have so far achieved. So just before I answer your question, just to give you a background of who we are. So we are South Sudan's not only leading, but the first mobile money service provider in South Sudan. We opened shop in 2019, so we slightly above 4 years. Before that, there was no mobile money service. I mean, it's unbelievable, but that's the truth. And so we actually made history by being the first provider to offer mobile money service in South Sudan. To your question, not only were we the first to offer mobile money in South Sudan, we have been also the first to offer mobile-based remittances. So before we came in, of course, there were remittances through banks and through other informal channels, that people had to use to send money. But we also have been the first to offer mobile-based cross-border remittances. So that also speaks to the seriousness and to the dedication and to the attention and focus we have for the South Sudan market. So for the first time, through mGurush, you could send money from a mobile wallet in South Sudan to a mobile wallet outside the country in real time. Okay, in real time. I think that should be underlined, in real time. Okay, and initially we started with Uganda and Kenya, as my colleague Raphael said. These are the two most dominant and natural corridors, because that's where most South Sudanese live. That's where most of the business inflows are coming from. So those are the two countries that we switched on. As we speak, we've grown these corridors about 14. So you can send money from South Sudan from our wallet in real time into over 15, 16 corridors globally. We'll soon be switching on Nigeria. You can terminate directly into Nigeria. Egypt is coming up. We are currently live in Ghana. We cover the whole of East Africa. I can send money from South Sudan into M-Pesa in Kenya, real time, Airtel, Uganda, MTN, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC. We cover the whole of DRC. We are in Malawi. We switching on Zambia. We are live in Cameroon. So we're expanding the whole ecosystem. That has been our contribution. So in terms of deepening, as Raphael, my colleague, said, even before you start thinking about offering very differentiated services, the goal is to first ensure that at least the service is there. So our focus now is to really ensure that at least in terms of the technology is there, the enablement is there for a wallet in South Sudan to talk to any wallet across the world. That's our goal. Then once we've achieved the major corridors, then we will then go into the differentiation that you're talking about, where we have very specific services. But one thing that that's on our radar is we're designing a product where each time you send a remittance, then you get points that are tied to insurance, medical insurance, because we realize that medical insurance is one of the biggest needs that our beneficiaries want. The other question was, I think that was the major one. Yeah, really. So that's who we are. That's our focus. Not much in product differentiation, but really just opening up the space and connecting South Sudan to the rest of the world via mobile.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I'd like to now take us back to Mr. David Akum, regulator. Follow-up question from what I asked. What challenges do you anticipate in the implementation of some of these recommendations provided? So we'll just take another round of questions from each, and then pick up some other questions that we've received from the participants in the Q&A chat. So this is to Mr. Akum. What challenges do you anticipate in the implementation of the recommendations? Over to you.
Thank you very much again, Edgar. Implementing effective migrant remittance policy in South Sudan can be challenging due to various factors, and one of them could be limited financial infrastructure. Inadequate financial infrastructure, including lack of banking services and digital payment service, can hinder effective transfer of remittance. This may force migrants to rely on informal channels, making a transaction less secure. Another factor could also be high transaction costs because of that are associated with remittance transfer, especially through formal channels, can discourage migrants from using these services. Lowering transaction costs is crucial to encouraging the use of formal financial services. Another thing, and a very huge factor in the context of South Sudan, is the foreign exchange risk. Fluctuation in exchange rate can affect the value of remittance received by a recipient. Both sender and recipient may face uncertainties related to both sender and recipient may face uncertainties related to currency exchange, impacting the overall value of remittances. Another factor could be lack of financial literacy. Limited financial literacy among both sender and recipient can pose challenges. Understanding formal financial services transaction procedures and potential risk is essential for the effective utilization of remittance policies or services. Limited access to identification document could be another factor. Yes, some migrants may lack proper identification document, making it challenging to comply with regulatory requirements for remittances transaction. Improving access to identification document is is very crucial. Again, also the security concern. Security issues in South Sudan may lead to concern about the safety of funds sent through formal channel building trust. The security of financial literacy is essential for the success of policies. Addressing these challenges may require comprehensive involvement and collaboration between the government, financial institutions, regulatory bodies, and international organizations. Policymakers need to work toward creating an enabling environment that encourages the use of formal remittance channels while considering the unique circumstances and needs for migrant and their families. I believe if all these are addressed, then we'll have a very collaborative approach to implement this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. You have spoken about some of the challenges which kind of mirror Mr. Ibrahim's presentation. Before I go over to Rafael or Joseph, there's a question from one participant, Mr. Paul Sengova. He says, we highlighted quite a few things and focus areas for intervention and gaps noted to be addressed. And you've just spoken about some challenges. So he was asking what specific initiatives are being done, but you kind of give us a hint about the progress made. But he's saying that what should they expect in 2024 or 2025? Or do you have any timelines for any of the initiatives to be done?
Once we you know, we are working with the Ministry of Justice to make sure the act is acted in time. And in the first quarter of 2024, we will do an exposure visit to the drafters, a team from Ministry of Justice and the Parliament, a number of them, and we have already identified the countries. We can take them at least a week to those two countries. By the time they come back, they will have understood, given that the national payment system law is still a greenfield and still new. So this will really fast track the implementation of the enactment of the national payment system law. So again, we have also signed a contract with the vendor or the ATS, the system that we are procuring. And this law is a prerequisite and the regulation is a prerequisite to the implementation of the ATS. So in view of that, by second quarter of 2024, I believe this, because again, the top leadership of this country is very much interested for us to go live. So once we take the law, that this is a prerequisite to the implementation of the national payment system, in which the president is always in the watch. So by second quarter of 2024, this law will be out and all the regulations will be signed, including the remittance regulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. Next question is for Mr. Rafael. What challenges do you face regarding cross-border transactions? How have the regulatory framework and infrastructure gaps inhibited your work as a remittance service provider? Over to you, Mr. Rafael.
Yeah, thank you very much, Edgar. And I might not want to repeat some of the items that have been mentioned, but some of the challenges that, and I think my colleague Akum from the Central Bank highlighted is one, in South Sudan specifically, we have a big issue around the exchange rate, and that really does impact, I think one of the figures I saw there at the beginning of the presentation was the cost of sending money from South Sudan is at 8% for every $200. Now the exchange rate differentials, for example, the South Sudanese currency has depreciated by over 50% in this financial year alone. That then poses a big challenge in terms of remittance value, how then we charge for remittances as financial institutions, and that needs to be addressed at some point through a bit of interventions by the central bank to offer a level of stability of the currency. One of the other key issues that is now an emerging issue, of course, is taxation. Recently, the South Sudan Revenue Authority introduced a new tax on commissions at around 18% of the money sent as commission to be remitted to the National Revenue Authority. This, of course, then changes instantly the cost of remittances and offers a challenge in increasing the value and volume of cross-border transactions, especially through formal networks. What this leads to over time is then we move to less formal networks in terms of sending money, given the high cost of taxation in that regard. Then finally, Edgar, from my side, I think one of the key things, of course, we have an issue in is the licensing regime across the region. If we can, have one common licensing regime across the IGAD region, I think we'll then remove the challenge of cross-border remittances because then it becomes expensive having to comply with different regulators. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Interesting pain points, but they're very focused. The same question goes to Joseph. Challenges when it comes to the environment in which you're operating in terms of the remittances for via mobile money thriving. Over to you, Mr. Joseph.
Okay, thank you, Edgar. I think my colleagues have really summed up the challenges we face, at an industry level. But just to highlight a couple, for us as mobile money, the issue of digital literacy, I think Director Kum hinted. We spend a lot of our resources trying to drive people into the digital arena. And how do you do that? You do that by constantly reaching out to people and pushing out a message on the benefits of mobile money. Now, that takes time, that takes resources. Okay, so it's a very slow, gradual and painful process. Okay, because without these people joining and signing up for a mobile wallet, you then can't target them for mobile-based remittances. So the initial onboarding process, the drive to move people is a slow process. We work in a very large country that has no sometimes support infrastructure, so it's very expensive. I can tell you that in some places, the infrastructure is absent. Powering up a tower to get network or to fuel it, it's very expensive. We work with the telcos for access. So bringing up or maintaining a network is very expensive. So the infrastructural cost in setting up a network through which then a mobile money service would thrive is very expensive. But that said, as the director mentioned, with the country stabilizing, more money coming into the country, more investors, we are seeing more expansion and investment into the network from the telcos. The other issue was on taxation. I agree entirely with Raphael. That taxation is something that the regulators and government must watch very carefully. As we saw in Uganda, the time that they introduced the small tax on cash deposits, the market reacted immediately. So we have to balance between, yes, the country needs taxation, but we also at a point where we are not yet at a critical mass where we have enough numbers for it to start to be able to start taxing. So our view or recommendation would be that let's first build the critical mass. And once we have the critical mass, then you can start taxing. But should you start taxing now, then it will actually drive back people into the informal ways of sending money. And that would be a disservice to the whole digital agenda that we are all trying to drive. Lastly is on perception risk. we work in a very regulated environment, especially those of us who deal with moving money across borders, across central banks. We're very highly regulated and we are very visible. But sometimes because of South Sudan, the risk that is pegged on South Sudan is actually, there's a lot of misconception about the country risk. For example, sometimes, you're trying to work with partners and they label you to be Sudan, which is at war or which has been sanctioned. And then you spend so much time saying, no, I am not Sudan, I am South Sudan. So these lenses through which the risk compliance teams of our partners look through us, really need to be very clear so that the country risk is really perceived as truly as it should be. So we need to have a process where we should de-risk that perception, because it's very strong and negatively impacts people who want to work with us. Those are the few that come to my mind. I agree with my other colleagues that on the others that have been mentioned on KYC, on infrastructure, on digital literacy, on taxation, as I've mentioned. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. We left with about 5 minutes and have a very interesting question from the people attending, from Delia Dean. Delia asks, have your respective, now this is a question I think that the private sector should try to answer. So have your respective institutions been able to leverage alternative data in addition to remittance transaction history in order to increase access, let's say, to digital credit? If not, what are the key challenges you're facing? And this I'll pass to Mr. Raphael. Maybe it's something that you're currently thinking of, or maybe in the future. Over to you, Raphael.
Sorry, just repeat that last component. You broke off slightly.
Yes, sure. So have your respective institutions been able to leverage alternative data in addition to remittance transaction history? So in order to increase access to digital credit, for example, what are the challenges you're facing if you haven't yet embarked on this?
Yeah, I thank you very much. I think that question, and I'll be brief given the time. I think one of the largest issues we've been discussing even with development partners is the issue around access to information. So currently, as we speak, we don't have a consolidated information pool, especially on, for example, the Credit Reference Bureau, which was started by the central bank a few years back, but the data there is inadequate for us to be able to make any decision or to be able to scale the use of data, for example, to drive lending, to drive even remittances. So as I say, that's a big challenge for us. There's no data that is in a pooled place that we can effectively use as financial institutions.
Thank you, Raphael. Joseph, in 1 minute, do you have maybe something to comment on that?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I agree that data is not consolidated. We have silos of data, and therefore it becomes very hard to have industry data for you to be able to make a decision. But I know that with the coming up of the national payment system, where we will harmonize all our payments. From that, I think it will be very easy for you to get a bird's eye view of what's happening across the industry, and therefore be able to get data from a consolidated viewpoint. But as of now, we just rely on our own transaction engines and maybe a few peer partners.
Thank you very much for that, Joseph. So we have several questions in the Q&A. I think the discussion was getting more and more interesting. But in the interest of time, I think I'll start to wind up today's webinar. I'd really like to thank my fellow panelists, from Mr. Ibrahim, David from the Central Bank, and then Rafael and Joseph from the private sector. And then also the distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you as well. UNCDF is very grateful for your participation. The level of interest and interactions in just 75 minutes are a true reflection of the opportunity at hand to further transform South Sudan remittance ecosystem. We also present our thanks again to the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation and the Sweden International Development Agency, SIDA, for their trust in letting us carry this out. To the Bank of South Sudan, the ministries, for example, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and other agencies that are involved in helping us do this research. We thank you very much for your leadership and the insights into this research. To the audience, thank you once again for your presence and the quality of the questions. We shall share the recording and the materials with all of you in the coming days. For the unanswered questions, we shall endeavor to respond to them, and they'll be part of the material that we'll send to you. So I'd like to thank you again, and we can end here. Have a good day, and God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.